All right, Jabosai, good morning. Good morning. Let us begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning share. To thank Baruch Hashem, our Talmud Torah sponsor for Tafshin Pei 5785. The Tilson Mishpacha, a little bit of a different sponsorship this morning. Naftali Tilson wishing a big mazel tov to his dear friend Benjamin Wall on the marriage of Benjamin's dear son Tuvia to Shira, beautiful couple. Will Meretz Hashem give endless nachas to all of Klal Yisrael. Incredible. Our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Nisan. Thank you to those, Baruch Hashem, who answered the call on WhatsApp yesterday. Thank you, Paul and Kathy Pollack, in celebration of the Nisan birthdays of his wife Kathy and his granddaughter Tikva Esther Pollack of West Orange, New Jersey. New Jersey? Mazel Tov, Meretz Hashem, continued celebrations of the month of Nisan. An anonymous Talmud Torah sponsor for the month of Nisan, in the schus of simchas for all of our children, and for Nisan to be the month of Geula Shlema for Klal Yisrael. Amen. And our week of learning, Paul and Kathy Pollack, information of the art site of Paul's father Shmuel ben Zechariah, great grandmother Cyril Bas Reb Dov, all of the Neshama Shnev and Aliyah. Daf Yomi sponsors for today, Saeed and Sima Hakin, in honor of the chasana of Yeshaya Lerner, to Leah Hannah Ehrenfeld, a Mazel Tov to Arian Shoshana, and continued nachas from the entire mishpacha. And Mazel Tov, we all wish a Mazel Tov to Rabbi today, Baruch Hashem, B'Shah Tov, Maslachas Shebizocha, to walk his son down to the chuppah, and the Meretz Hashem see him build a binyan ad a home filled with Kedusha, with Mazel, with Bracha, Amev Esim Shanim Tovos. Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov. We'll say it, of course, as always, we dedicate our learning in the schus. The Rosh Hashanah should bring home all of our hostages. Our holy soldiers should be successful. B'chol ma'aseh yadeim, and indeed, the month of Nisan should be a geula, and Meretz Hashem, a personal geula, a national geula, and Meretz Hashem b'karov. Well, with that, let us begin. A lot to do today. Great daf, really great daf ahead of us today. Today's daf is Kuf Dalid. We are picking up on Kuf Gimel Amud Beis. We left off at Tanya Hayir Rabbi Meir Omer, which is about 15 lines down from the top. Tanya Hayir Rabbi Meir used to say, Avshalom ein lo chelik l'olam haba. Avshalom doesn't have a portion in the world to come. Remember again, Avshalom, the son of David HaMelech, who led a rebellion against his father. So Avshalom doesn't have a chelik l'olam haba. Shneimar Vayaku es Avshalom ve'emisu ve'aku ba'olam hazeh ve'emisu li'olam haba. Tanya Rabbi Shimon Elazar says, B'shor Meir, Achos ve'achazyo v'chol malchi Yisrael shekasav bohen vayas hara b'nei Hashem lo chayin v'lo nidonin. So this is an interesting case. Rabbi Shmuel Silber says, in the name of Rabbi Meir, Achaz and Achazyo, all of the kings of Malchus Yisrael who did bad stuff, and the way the pasuk refers to them is that they did that which was evil in the eyes of Hashem. Lo chayin is interesting. Lo chayin means, lo chayin, that halacha l'mais again, they do not come back with tchias hamesim, but on the other hand, lo nidonin, they don't go to Gehenna. They don't go get that. They're not judged. Rashi points out over here, Lo Chaim, Lo Yichlu Olam Habayim Tzadikim, Vein Nidonin Nami B'Gehenam. It's very interesting. So there are certain people again who they're neither resurrected nor are they put in Gehenna. The Gemara says, "V'gam dam not good." So we'll say, which is quite fascinating, because again, this limbo state would seem to be worse than anything else. In other words, a person goes to Gehenna, so we know again, Gehenna has a cleansing property upon the neshama. Going to Gehenna allows the neshama ultimately again to regain its luster and move forward. The inability to go ahead and go to Gehenna prevents the neshama from progressing, which seems to be the worst onesh of all. So in addition to all of the avodah zarah that Menashe introduced, apparently there was also a tremendous amount of blood that was shed, to the point that Yerushalayim was filled with blood from one end to the other. So the Gemara says, the Gemara tries to understand what exactly is it that Menashe did. When we say that Menashe spilled all of this blood, what does it mean? Is that literal? Spilled all of this? What does it mean? To which the Gemara says, Hachatargimo Shar Yeshaya. Some say it means that he killed Yeshaya Hanavi. Incredible that although it was one person, because it was Yeshaya, it's considered as if he filled up Yerushalayim from one end to the other with blood. But Ma'arava Amrin in Eretz Yisrael, they said, Sha'asat Selem Masoi Elef Bnei Adam. That literally, it's interesting. So Menashe made it an avodah zarah, and the idol itself was so big that it required 1,000 people to lift it. And every day it would kill all of them. So apparently there was this idol that he commanded 1,000 people to lift up, but the weight of the idol was too much and it would come crashing down upon those who went ahead and carried it. So he killed 1,000 people every day. The Bible says there's a tremendous metaphor in that statement. There are the difference between, if you think about this, right? So there was a Avodah Zarah that was too heavy to carry, and it crushed everyone who carried it. Compare that with what the Gemara says about the Aron, right? That the Kohanim who went ahead and carried the Aron, what does the Gemara say? Ha'aron nose es nos av. The Aron carried those who carried it. When you put your kolchos into the right things, when you put your energies into the right things, those things lift you up. You put your koach into Torah, you put your koach into Avodas Hashem, you put your koach into Eretz Yisrael, those things lift you up. You put your energies, your strengths, and your time into the wrong thing, and those things will crush you, right? Those things will bury you. Those things will bless you. Those things will finish you. Tremendous yisod. What we put our koach into, though, it depends whether or not that very thing, that very entity, that very initiative will lift me or bury me. The Gemara goes weiter. Kiman az lahad amar barachana shkula neshama shel tzaddik echad keneged kol ha'olam kulo. Beautiful Gemara. That literally the neshama of a tzaddik, the neshama is as worthy or corresponds to the neshamas of an entire generation. Who is that? Kiman dami Yeshaya harag. This reflects the view that Menashe killed Yeshaya. That although Menashe, quote unquote, only killed one person, right? But Lemaisa, again, the pasuk reckons it as if he filled Yerushalayim with blood from one end to the other. So the Gemara says, Ksiv Pasel, Uksiv Psilim. So I'll say, interesting, by Menashe it says he built an idol, singular, and then it says he built idols, plural. So which one is it? I'm Rabbi Yochanan. Betchila asala pirtzaf echad. This is incredible. In the beginning, Menashe made an idol with one face. One face. Ulebasof asalo arba'a pirtzufin kedei shetira shechina v'tichos. At the end, he ended up making an idol with 4 different faces. Why 4 different faces? As we'll see in just a moment, he positioned it in the Beis Hamikdash, and he wanted it to be that Lemaisa, wherever, right? Kiviyachol, Chadosh Baruch Hu, the Shechina would see the idol wherever it was. So it says, right? Can you imagine like that level of chutzpah? He wanted to make sure that the Rebbeinu Shalom saw the pasuk, Moshe Shalom saw the idol. Incredible. So the Gemara goes weiter. Achaz ha'amidu ba'aliyah. So Achaz went ahead and put his idol in the upper story of the Beis Hamikdash. Okay, the Gemara Shneimar ve'es hamizbachos asher alagag alias Achaz. Menashe hamid behechol. Menashe, he put his idol in the Beis Hamikdash itself. Shneimar in the hechol. Shneimar vayasvim pesal asher she'asher bebayis asher amar Hashem al David ve'al Shlomo bebayis zebu Yishlaim asher bacharti mikol shiftei Yisrael asim eshmisham Amon hechnis lebeis kadosh hakadoshim. Amon took it a step further, and Amon put the idol literally again in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the Holy of Holies. Shneimar ki katzar hamatzah mihishtara v'amasechat sara kihis kanes. So we'll say, listen to this passage. It's actually quite interesting. The passage reads as follows: My ki katzar hamatzah mihishtareya. What does it mean that the couch, literally translated, it means the couch was too short to stretch out. What does that mean? Rabbi Shmuel Silber, Rabbi Yonasan, ze ki katzer hamatzeh zem nishtara alav shtei reim ke'echad. The couch, the Beis Hamikdash, was too small for 2 people to lay on together, which means we'll say it's a reference to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Avodah Zarah, right? Like overwhelming. That the Beis Hamikdash can't contain both the Shechina and Avodah Zarah. And therefore the Rebbeinu Shalom essentially said, right, this town's not big enough for the 2 of us. If you're going to put Avodah Zarah in the Beis Hamikdash, I'm out. I'm about to say first of the widest lines. What does it mean that the cover itself was too narrow? So the Gemara says, Rabbi Shmuel Silber, Rabbi Yochanan kevemat lahaikra hava bachi. Rabbi Yochanan would come to this pasuk, he would cry. He would say, Misha kasuv bo kones kaned mehayam. So I say, so he about he who it says, about the Moshe who it says that literally again he commands the seas. He commands the seas. He has to contend with an idol to share the cover. As I say, sometimes you have to share a cover, and the cover is too small for 2 people. Kiviyachal Kadosh Baruch Hu says the cover is too small for both of us. Can't cover me and the Avodah Zarah. Rabbi Yochanan says, really? The Ribono Shel Olam has to fight for cover? Who has to fight for cover with an Avodah Zarah? He would cry. So the Gemara goes weiter. Achaz bitla savoda. The Chasam es Torah. So Asam went ahead. King Achaz went ahead, and he stopped the avodah in the Beis Hamikdash, and he also literally again truncated the study of Torah. Shneimar Tzur Tu'uda Chasum Torah B'Lomdai. Menashe Kader Es Haskaros. Menashe went ahead and scratched out the names of HaKadosh Baruch Hu from the Torah. V'haras HaMizbeach. And he went ahead and he destroyed the Mizbeach. The Gemara said, Amon, Saraf HaSator V'Hela Shemamis Al Gabe Mizbeach. Amon went ahead and burnt the Torah and created cobwebs, literally caused cobwebs to form in the Mizbeach, which represents, again, inaction. Inaction. Achaz Hitres HaErva. This is incredible. Achaz permitted immoral relationships. Menashe Ba'al Achoso. Menashe had relations with his sister. Amon Ba'al Imo. Amon, unfortunately, engaged in an act of incest with his mother, Shneimar, ki hu Amon harbe ashmo. Rabbi Shmuel said, by the way, just so you understand, this is the natural progression of things. The moment that the Ribono Shel Olam is no longer your guiding force, right? And the moment that a person is not anchored in a system of real religious development, immorality and idolatry is there. Remember again, we said this many times. What's idolatry? Idolatry is when you make God in your own image. You decide what you want and you create a system around that. The moment that occurs, by definition, immorality is soon to follow. So the Gemara goes, Rabbi Yochanan Rabbi Elazar, Chadamar says, Saraf has Torah. The Chadamar Shabal Imo. One says that Ammon went ahead and burnt the Torah. Other says that, and again, he had relations with his mother. So the Gemara says, Amar lo Imo, Klum Yeshlecha Hana. So says, interestingly enough, his mother said to him, really? Like, you want to do this? Literally translated, can you have any pleasure, right, from the place where you emanated from? Like, his mother was asking, what are you doing? Rabbi said, this is incredible. So Ammon said, this isn't about pleasure. This is about angering God. Right? This is about rebellion. So the Gemara goes weiter. Ki asi Yoyakim Amar. So listen to this. When Yoyakim came on the scene, he said, Kamai lo yadi la'arguze klum. Right? So ultimately, again, la'arguze. So this is incredible. Yoyakim said, the ones who came before me, they didn't really know how to anger God. I could show you how to anger God, right? And I will say, by the way, what's just so fascinating about this, what do you see from all of this? It's not just the pshat. We think about like Avodah Zarah, like people didn't believe. If you don't believe, then fine, like just go on your way. Why the need to anger God? Why the need to anger God? Like, why the need to repudiate HaKadosh Baruch Hu in such a dramatic way? This ties back to what we spoke about yesterday. When you are secure enough in your own beliefs, you do not need other people to agree with you, right? Nor do you have to spend your life trying to show other people why it is that they're wrong. The only people who need to show everyone else why they're wrong, right, and the only people who need everyone else to agree with them are people who are fundamentally and wholly insecure in what they believe. If I believe what I believe, good, do whatever you want. I'm going to live my life. I'm going to do my thing. I believe in what I'm doing. I don't need you to buy into it. This active repudiation and this need to rebel against HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like this need to give a shtach to the Ribono Shel Olam, represents a heightened level of insecurity. As evil as these men were, deep down, they knew who HaKadosh Baruch Hu was, they knew what the Ribono Shel Olam was, and they knew where their allegiance should be. When you walk around life with that kind of guilt, so you have to repudiate, and you have to rebel, and you have to give the shtach every day. So comes Yoyakim, and he says, I will show these guys how to sin. First of all, the only thing we really need a God for is the sun. But we don't even need it for the sun. God could take back his son. We have this type of gold, this parvayim gold, which apparently was very shiny and luminescent. So Yaakov said we could light the world through that. There's only one problem, they said to Yoakim, even the gold and silver belongs to God. Everything belongs to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. No. Yoakim said, no, he already gave the gold and silver to us. Where do we know this? From he goes to the pasuk, Shneimar, Hashamayim Shemayim LaHashem, V'Haaretz Nasa L'Bnei I was like, you hear like the ridiculousness of this? Right? He's like, no, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us the money. It's ours. This is Yoakim who's rebelling against the HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I will say, no matter how much a Yid tries to run away from Hashem, you can't do it. You can't do it. There is this inevitable pull between man and God that always pulls man back to his source. Sometimes we go back easier, sometimes we go back faster, but we always return back. Incredible. Amalei Rava Rabba Bar Mari, Mipnei Malo Manu Es Yehoyakim. So I'll say, if Yehoyakim was such a bad guy, why is he not included in the list of kings who don't have a portion in the world to come? Right? The Mishnah only lists 3 kings. Why isn't Yehoyakim listed as well? Mishum dechsiv bei v'yeser divrei Yehoyakim v'toivosav asher asa v'nimtza alav. Because after all, the pasuk says the rest of the things of Yehoyakim and all of his abominations that he did, and all the different things v'nimtza alav, and that which was found upon him. So the Gemara has to get ready for this. My v'nimtza alav. What does that mean? That which was found upon him. Rabbi Yochanan Rabbi Lazar. Chadamar shekchakak shem avodas kochavim al amasal. Wow. One says that he had a tattoo on his makom milah, and what did he tattoo there? He tattooed the name of his avodah zara, right? V'chadamar shekchakak shem shamayim al amasal. Others say that no, he actually tattooed the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu on his makom milah. And we'll say now, what is that? So this goes back to Shabbos' daf. Remember again, the Gemara spoke about Nevat, right? And the Gemara spoke about Achitofel, and other people who had these visions of fire coming out of the makom milah. Again, it represents strength and it represents vitality. So again, the Avodah Zarah piece there, ultimately representing that this is the entirety of his life. Obviously, tattooing the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu there was an incredible attempt to go ahead and disparage and disrespect HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Overwhelming. So I just want to point out, the Gemara doesn't answer why Yehoyakim is not included. So the Gemara answers, the Gemara asks it, the Gemara talks about this whole tattoo zach over here, and then leaves it. We'll come back to Yehoyakim a little bit more on Kuf Daled. So the Gemara goes weiter. So the answer, I don't know why Yehoyakim wasn't included in the list, but I'll tell you some other things about the other people. So we'll say Micha. Now remember again, we spoke about Micha on Shabbos' daf as well. Micha, first of all, clearly lived for a very long time. But remember again, Micha was the baby who was rescued by Moshe Rabbeinu from the bricks. Right, he was a Jewish baby who was thrown into the bricks, into the structures. When the Jews did not produce the proper tally of bricks, Moshe Rabbeinu pulls him out. This is HaKadosh Baruch Hu says essentially to Moshe, "Let me run my world. I promise you, I know what it is that I'm doing." He pulls the baby out. It turns out to be Micha. Micha did a couple of things. Either Micha himself brought Avodah Zara, ultimately through the Yam Suf, right? Rashi gave 2 possibilities. I didn't do this Rashi on Shabbos because I ran out of time. But it usually happens. So, right, either he brought a idol with him through Yam Suf, or remember, when the Jews were leaving Egypt, so Moshe Rabbeinu had to get the casket of Yosef, which was buried on the bottom of the Nile. He took a piece of clay and he wrote the name of Hashem on it, threw it into the Nile, and the casket floated to the top. Micha found that piece of clay and took it. He took it, and with that piece of clay, he was able to do all sorts of stuff. Either way, he wasn't a good guy, right? And he worshipped a lot of Avodah Zarah and he created his own alternate Beis Hamikdash, like an Avodah Zarah shtibel, that he created on his own. So the Gemara says, why wasn't he included in the list of people who don't have a portion of the world to come? So lo manu es Micha is incredible. Because he did achnasas archim. Incredible. So Micha did chesed. His home was open to people. And so when people passed by and they needed something to eat, he could always stop at the house of Micha. Rashi says, Shayu kala ola misarchin etzlo ki dichsiv, kala over v'shav ela levim ze Micha. We'll say, is this not absolutely incredible? Micha worshipped Avodah Zarah, introduced Avodah Zarah, did a ton of terrible things, but at the end of the day, he was machnis archim. Whenever someone was in need, someone needed bread, his home was always open. Shneimar kol or v'shav alavim v'arav b'yom tzara v'hika b'yam galim am Rabbi Yochanan zeh pislo shal Micha. Tanya ben Asin Omer migrav l'shilo gimel. Listen to this. Now, Grav was the place where Micha set up his temple, right? And so from Grav to Shiloh, where the Mishkan was 3 mil, not far. Via Ashan ha'ma'aracha va'ashan pesal Micha mis'arvin zeh bazeh. The smoke from the Mizbeach, right, in the Mishkan, and the smoke from Micha's temple, from Micha's temple, would mix together. Ubikshu malachei asharis ladochvo. And the malach literally translated, malachei asharis wanted to push Micha. Now what it means is the malachim wanted to punish Micha because not only was he worshiping Avodah Zarah, but his Avodah Zarah was mixing in with the Beis Hamikdash, with the Mishkan. Right? He was mixing in, so the malachim wanted to push him. Incredible. So Akash Baruch Hu said, leave Micha alone. Akash Baruch Hu protected Micha. Why? Because ultimately, again, he goes ahead and he makes sure that Jews have bread whenever they are in need. So we'll say, regarding this, the people of Pilegesh Begiva was a much more dramatic and traumatic story, which we'll come back to later on. But they were punished. So again, for the people of Pilegesh Begiva, so again, Micha's temple was there. Akash Baruch Hu said, when Micha's temple was there, when there was Avodah Zarah, you never stuck up for me. But yet again, when there was an affront to the dignity of one of your own, then suddenly you went to battle. Again, we'll come back to that story a little bit later, Amir Hashem. But I will say, but how overwhelming is this? How overwhelming is this? That what Suchus protected Micha? Chesed. You see this theme over and over and over. The Ribono Shel Olam could forgive any sin. He really can. Even Avodah Zarah, he could forgive. As long as we are good to each other, as long as we are rodfei shalom, as long as we love one another, as long as our homes are open to each other, as long as we take care of each other, as long as that midah is present within Klal Yisrael, the Ribono Shel Olam could find in his heart to forgive almost any infraction. Incredible. I'm Rabbi Yochanan Rabbi Shmuel Silber in Kisma. Gedola lekima she'erchika shtei mishpachos miYisrael. Shneimar al devar shelo kidmu eschem b'lechem mayim. So you see over here, both say legima literally means like tasting. What it means over here in this context is you see how great hachnasas archim is. Chesed is, right? Chesed is why? Because in the schus, ultimately again, of two families in Klal Yisrael who did not offer food to, two families who did not offer food to Klal Yisrael, they were distanced. Who is it a reference to? Ammon and Moav. Ammon and Moav, right? Ammon and Moav did not offer us food and drink during our time in the desert. And therefore, again, Shlo Kidmu, Yisrael B'lechem, Rashi says, so therefore, again, they're not allowed to come into Klal Yisrael. Rabbi Yochanan Didei Amar, Merachakes Esakro. This is incredible. Listen to this statement. Rabbi Yochanan says like this. In general, Hachnasas Archim, right? Hospitality, being there for each other. Merachekes esakrovim. It goes ahead and it distances the ones who are close, right? So in other words, failure to do so, failure to open your home to the other, merachekes esakrovim, distances the ones who are close. Mikareves esarechokim, brings close the ones who are far. Ma'alemes einay min Hashem, causes Hashem to look away from the wicked. Umashre shchina al nevi abal, and ultimately, again, causes prophecy to come upon even false prophets, like prophets of Baal. So the Gemara says, V'shigagaso ola zadon. And failure to do chesed for the other, even accidentally, is treated by HaKadosh Baruch Hu as an intentional avera. Okay, so let's analyze each of these statements. Number one, merachekes esakrovim. What does it mean that ultimately it distances those who are close? So it was at the top of Kuf Daled 104a, may Ammon and Moab. So Ammon and Moab, who are our cousins. They are cousins, but yet they are distanced from us. They're not allowed to come into Klal Yisrael. Why? Because they failed to exhibit proper chesed towards us. When we were in the desert, traveling in the desert, they did not offer us bread and water. Next, umikareves es harachokim, it brings close. So the first part is failure to do achnasas archim. It's not really achnasas archim, it's just human kindness. It's not about inviting someone into your house, right? We weren't asking to do like a Shabbaton in Ammon and Moab. It's just you see your mishpacha traveling, you don't offer them bread and water. You don't know how to exhibit basic human decency. So that's merachakes esakrovim. Failure to exhibit human decency pushes away those who are close. Ammon and Moab were close, pushes them away. Next, if you do so, mikareves esarachokim, it brings close those who are far. So the Gemara says, Yisro, this is Yisro. So beautiful. Dam Rabbi Yochanan, Bischar karo'en lo v'yochal lechem. So we'll say after Moshe Rabbeinu defended Tzipora right, and her sisters by the well. So they come back and they tell Yisro, Ish Ivri Hitzilanu, right? Ish Mitzri Hitzilanu, sorry. They said there was an Egyptian man, that's how they refer to Moshe, Egyptian man that saved us by the well. So what does Yisro say? Yisro says, bring him home. Bring him home. Right, call him here and let him eat bread with us. So because Yisro invited Moshe to eat bread, Zachu b'nei banav v'yashu b'lishkas hagazis. Yisro had grandchildren who served as members of the Sanhedrin. Shnei Amar u'mishpachos sofrim yoshvei yavitz tartayim shematim sochsim heima hakenim haboim machmas avi beis avrecha v'ksiv asam u'bnei keni chosin Moshe alu meir hatmarim es bnei Yehuda midbar Yehuda shebenegeb arach v'yelech v'yashav es ha'am. So we'll say, so the point over here is you see the Canaan. The Canaan were people who ended up sitting in the Lishkas Hagazis, the Sanhedrin. Who are the Canaan? Descendants of Yisro. So the Gemara attributes the fact that Yisro had descendants who sat in the Sanhedrin to what? To the fact that he invited Moshe Rabbeinu to join him for bread. Incredible. And again, hospitality, human kindness, just basic human kindness, causes HaKadosh Baruch Hu to look away from the deeds of the wicked. Who is that? That's Micha. That's Micha. That's what we just saw before. Despite the fact that Micha is worshiping idolatry. Not only is he worshiping idolatry, but what else? He's going ahead and literally has his own shtibel for idolatry. But yet, again, because his home was open, Therefore, halacha l'maisa again. But I'm sorry, because his home was open, Hakadosh Baruch Hu looked away. Umashra shchina al nevi'ei habal, and it even causes Hakadosh Baruch Hu to go ahead and rest His spirit on the prophets of the Baal. Where do we learn that from? So this is very interesting. Mechavero shal Ido hanavi, tichsiv vayhi heim yoshem ala shulchan vehi devar Hashem ala navi asher hishivu. So this is the interesting story with Ido. Ido, the Navi Ido, was sent to dispatch a message to Yeravam. Hakadosh Baruch Hu told him, Ido, don't stop. Don't stop on your way there. Don't stop on your way back. Just do your job and come home. He said there was a false prophet who told Ido, hey, I'm a prophet like you. I'm a prophet just like you. Come over and let's break bread together. So Ido listened. He made a mistake. He listened. And as they were sitting at the table, this false prophet actually received a prophecy from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, unfortunately, the prophecy was that Ido was going to die. Sure enough, Ido left the house. He was devoured by a lion. But the point over here is, you see, why did this false prophet merit prophecy? The Gemara attributes it to his achnas asorchim, to his hospitality, to his opening of his home. Failure to exhibit human kindness, even if it's by accident, is treated as a willful commission. So Amar Yehuda, Amar Rav, Amale Helvu Yohanas al Nadav Shteki Karos. So this is incredible. Now this is the story. Remember, David HaMelech, after he's first coronated, doesn't want to be king. Well, David HaMelech really never wanted to be king. But after he's first coronated, Shaul thinks that David is trying to unseat him and steal the throne. David will not fight Shaul. Instead, he chooses to flee. So, amazingly enough, so who is David HaMelech's best friend in the entire world? Yonasan, who was the son of Shaul. So what happens? So Yonasan tells David to escape. This is right. We just read this on Shabbos, Machar Chodesh. Right? He tells David to go ahead and escape. So the Gemara says when David escaped, he left without food. The Gemara says, had Yonasan sent David with 2 loaves of bread, lo nergad nov ira kohanim, velo nitrog doeg hadomi, velo nerag shalosh loshas banav. So we'll say, because David didn't have food, he goes to the city of Nov. In the city of Nov, which was the city of Kohanim, he asks for food. They say, who are you? Who are you? He says, I am a son-in-law of the king, and I'm on a secret mission from the king. He couldn't tell what was really happening. To fast forward a little bit, Doeg Hadomi gives Shaul a report that Nov is aiding and abetting David. Shaul sees them as traitors, wipes out virtually the entire city of Nov. That was the sin that sealed the fate of Shaul and his sons. The Gemara says, all why? Why did all this happen? It's overwhelming. Why? Because Yonasan didn't give David 2 loaves of bread. Had David had bread, he wouldn't have to stop at Nov. Had he not stopped at Nov, they wouldn't have been decimated. Had Nov not been decimated, Shaul would have been saved. Doeg would have been saved. Overwhelming. Now, by the way, did Yonasan do anything intentionally? Not at all. Fakert. he was telling his best friend in the world, go, just get out, okay? But you should have sent him with food. Overwhelming, Rabbi Yosef, overwhelming. So we'll say, so why isn't, going back a little bit, why isn't Achaz counted amongst the kings who didn't have a portion in the world to come? It's very interesting because Achaz was positioned between two righteous people. Because remember, Achaz's father was Yosam, and his son was Chizkiah. He has a father who's righteous and a son who's righteous. So because he was sandwiched by righteousness, therefore again, that provided him some level of salvation. The Gemara says, Ben Yosem l'Chizkiyo, Rav Yosef Amar Mivnei Shayalo Boshes Panmisheo. So there's another reason. Why wasn't Achaz ultimately again? Why didn't he lose his portion of the world to come? Because Achaz had some level of righteousness. What was his righteousness? In that, again, he was embarrassed about his behavior in the presence of Yoshio. Shnei Amar, V'yomer Shmuel Yoshio, say no likras Achaz, ato ushar Yoshev bincha, el kitzei talas habrecha yona al misilas sedei koves. So again, Chashon Baruch Hu says to Yeshayahu, go out with your son Shayoshev and go ahead and greet Achaz, right? And you'll find him by state koves. My koves, what does that mean? Ikadamri, tikavshinu la'ape v'chalav. Some say that when Achaz saw Yoshio, he avoided eye contact, he looked down and he ran away. The Ikadamri, others say, Uchla de katzri sachaf aresha v'chalav. Others say essentially put a basket on his head, right, and ran away. In other words, Achaz was embarrassed about his actions and could not look the Navi in the eye. The Gemara attributes that embarrassment was a maila, right? That was something beneficial. That was a plus for Achaz, and ultimately, again, prevented him from losing his portion in the world to come. Incredible. So why wasn't Ammon? Why isn't Ammon, who also was a Rasha, why isn't he included ultimately again in the list of people who lost their portion in the world to come? Ultimately, again, because of Yoshio. Yoshio was Ammon's son. So because Ammon had a righteous son, therefore again out of covet to the son, the father doesn't lose the portion in the world to come. Menashe nami lo nimni, one second, if that's the case, then Menashe also shouldn't go out and lose his portion in the world to come. Why? In the merit of his father. Who was Menashe's father? Menashe's father was Chizkiyo. So he had a righteous father, so why not? Why doesn't his righteous father save him from losing his portion in the world to come? So we'll say this is a wild Gemara. Bra mizaki abba, abba lo mizaki bra. A son benefits his father, a father doesn't benefit his son. Now what does that mean? The actions of a son have the ability to go ahead and help the father, right? But the actions of a father don't have the ability to help a son. Now, what is so the Maharsha explains this in a very simple way. The only reason a son exists is why? Because of his father. So therefore, by definition, the actions of the son, by definition, help the father. On the other hand, the father exists with or without his son. And therefore, halacha l'maaseh, the actions of the father cannot help his son at all. An incredible, incredible idea. Bra mizaki abba, abba lo mizaki bra. So ultimately, again, a son could benefit his father. That's why, again, these righteous sons have the ability to provide salvation, ultimately, again, for their father. But abba lo mizaki bra. But a father, ultimately, again, cannot go ahead and create zichuyos for Shashvosa, which also is a tremendous yisod in parenting as well. That as a parent, right, we can go ahead and we can give our children, hopefully give them anything and everything. I don't mean materially, I'm talking more spiritually. But at the end of the day, our children have to make a choice about what they want to do, right? You could be the best father in the world. You could give your son anything and everything he needs to be successful. He has to choose to implement, to utilize, and to internalize those tools. And a father can't force him to do that. A tremendous, tremendous yisod. The Gemara goes right there. Techsev ve'ein miyadi matzil. Ve'ein miyadi matzil. Incredible. So we'll say, by the way, it also, the bra abba, so banim atam Hashem Elokeichem, we are children to the Ribono Shel Olam. So just understand about saying along this same idea, bra mizaki abba, what a son could do for a father is overwhelming. The nachas that we could do for HaKadosh Baruch Hu is limitless. But interestingly enough, Abba lo mezake bra. Kadosh Baruch Hu, once again, could give us all the opportunities in the world. He can't force us to become great, right? We have the greatest father in the world. But just because you have the greatest father in the world, inaction on our part doesn't get us anywhere. The fact that I have a great father is very nice. But Lamaisa, what does that actually do for me? Very little. The only way for me to become great is if I choose to take decisive action on my own. So when I do great things, bra mizake Abba. But the fact that Abba is great is not mizake bra. If I want to become great, I have to take decisive action on my own. Incredible. Tichsev ve'emi yadi matzil, ein Avram matzil as Yishmael, ein Yitzchak matzil as Esav. Avram can't save Yishmael, and Yitzchak can't save Esav. You could have the greatest father in the world, but you still have to make the decision to be personally great. And Avram can't save Yishmael, a Yitzchak can't save HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and Abosai, a Ribono Shel Olam can't save me or you either. You could have the greatest father in the world, but if you want greatness for your own life, you have to make the decision to put in the work. You have to make the decision to put in the effort. You have to make the decision to make something great of yourself. By the way, now that we said this, now I also understand why Achaz is not included in the lists of kings who lost their portion of the world to come. Why? Because at the end of the day, he had a son who he also had a great son. His great son was Chizkiyahu. Incredible. Remember, the Gemara asked this question on Kuf Gimel Amud Beis. Why isn't Yehoyakim included in the list of kings who lost their portion? Again, remember, we saw Yehoyakim. In addition to all the other stuff, he also was a tattoo artist, right? So again, and some unsavory tattoos. So at the end of the day, why isn't he included in the list of kings who lost their portion of the world to come? To which the Gemara says, this is incredible. We saw the story already. On the skull of Yehoyakim, now remember again, part of Yehoyakim's punishment was Yehoyakim was not buried. His body was like thrown into the street like the carcass of an animal. On his skull it was written, Zos va'odacheres. Zos means you will remain unburied, va'odacheres, and something else will happen to you. So we'll say, watch this. Zekeno Rabbi Breda, we saw the story. Zekeno Rabbi Breda, Ashkach Gugulasa dahavi kashadja b'shari Yushalayim uksiv ba zos va'odacheres. So the grandfather Rabbi Breda was once walking and he found a skull that was discarded by the entrance of Yerushalayim. I will say, just so you understand, to find the skull by the entrance of Yerushalayim is very strange, right? Remember again, I will say, in Yerushalayim, first of all, we don't bury anyone within the walls of Yerushalayim itself, right? That's why the closest cemetery to Yerushalayim is Har HaZeisim, right? Har HaZeisim is outside of the walls of the old city, right? Outside of the walls of Yerushalayim. So, and furthermore, again, we're so makbid with Tum and Tara by Yerushalayim, so to find an unburied skull by Yerushalayim is very strange. So the grandfather Rabbi Preda finds this unburied skull. On it, it's written Zos va'odacheres. It's literally written on the skull, this and something else. So he finds it. Kavra v'lo ikbara. Kabra v'lo ikbara. He buried it, but then like it surfaced again. He buried it a second time and it surfaced again. Amar gulgalasa Yehoyakimhu dichsibei. So he surmised, very interesting, surmised that this must be the skull of King Yehoyakim. This must be the skull of King Yehoyakim, who was, unfortunately, again, part of his punishment was you'll be buried like the carcass of a donkey. You'll just be discarded. So you understand the fact that this skull would not remain buried must mean that at the end of the day, this was Yehoyakim. Amar Malkahu v'lo echsher l'zalzulebe. So nevertheless, the grandfather I prayed that felt, it's not right. It's not right. He's still a king. He was a king. And there is dignity that should be given to the king, even if he was a rasha. So therefore, again, what did he do? Obviously, burial wasn't going to work. Karcha b'shirai va'osa b'sifsa. He wrapped it in silk and he put the skull in a chest. Chazisa devisu. So what happened? His wife saw the skull wrapped in a piece of silk in a chest. Savraha de'isisa kamai sahava. She thought that it was the skull of his first wife. They both say, by the way, in the previous version of the story, so remember again, there was a neighbor, right? There was a neighbor. There's always a neighbor, right? A yenta, right? So there's always a neighbor. So in the first story, there was a neighbor who came and kind of put this idea in her head. Okay, this story is a little bit of a different version. So she saw the skull. She assumed that it was the first wife of the grandfather, Rai Pereda. What the ha lo kaman shila, and clearly he hadn't forgotten her. He hadn't forgotten his first wife. So the Gemara says, Shagra tanura v'kalsa. So she fired up the oven, she threw the skull in the oven and incinerated the skull that way. Hainu dichsev zos va'od acheres. And I will say, after this happened, they realized this was the meaning of the pasuk, that Yoyakim would have zos. In other words, his body would remain unburied, va'od acheres, his skull would be incinerated. So I will say, so again, this was Yoyakim's punishment. Because this was Yoyakim's punishment, therefore what? Therefore, halacha l'maaseh, he got olam haba. That's why he's not counted in the list of kings who lost their portion, because he had this punishment, he retained his portion of olam haba. Tanya, Rabbi Shimon Elazar, b'shvil hatov be'inecha asisi. Tanya, Rabbi Shimon Elazar, b'shvil hatov be'inecha asisi. Rashi says over here, b'shvil hatov. So Rashi says, Bishvil Chizkiah sheshibech es atzmo damar atov beinech asisi garam lo she'amar ma'os ki ela beis Hashem sheshal os me'akadosh baruch hu she'avera gorer savera. So I'll say we'll see the whole story unfold over here in just a moment, right? But Chizkiah, who was tzaddik, praised himself a bit too much. So Bishvil tov beinech asisi. So Chizkiah said, Chashbar Baruch Hu, I've done what you've asked of me. So ma'os bishvil, so the Gemara says asisi ma'os bishvil ma'os nachrim achlu al shulchano. So because ultimately Chizkiah did two things wrong. Number one, he praised himself. Number two, he asked HaKadosh Baruch Hu for signs for certain brachas. As a result of this, so nachrim achlu al shulchano. Gentiles ate at his table. Foreign leaders ate at his table. And because, again, foreigners ate at his table, it caused galus for his children. Whoever invites idolaters into his home and serves them, gorem galus labanav, causes exile for his son. Shneimar, both say into the first of the widest lines. Shneimar ubanecha sheyetzu mimecha shetolid yikhu vayasar yisim behechal melech Bavel v'yismach aleim Chizkiah bayarim. It's called beis nochacha es hakesef es hazav es habusamim es shemen hatov. So Chizkiah had these representatives of Melech Bavel in his home, and he showed them all the greatness of his home. So Mars Amarav, my beis nachsa. What does it mean beis nachsa? Ishto hishkas alehem. Chizkiah's own wife served them. And this was considered to be a lack of tznius. Nothing happened, right? But Lamaisa, he had his own wife serve these Ovdei Kochavim. Shmuel says, Beis Knazav Haralaim, he showed them the treasury. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Zin Ochel Zin Haralaim. He had special weaponry that was able to destroy any other weaponry, and he showed it to them, and this was inappropriate. In other words, he showed off too much to these visitors, and that caused galus. So the Gemara will say, now the Gemara is going to go, now that we spoke about Chizkiah, right? Chizkiah, Melech Bavel ultimately comes and destroys the Beis HaMikdash. Now, it's actually quite a moving Gemara. The Gemara is going to launch into a little bit of a discussion of Megillas Eicha, an interpretation of a number of the Pesukim, very moving. Eicha Yoshva Badad. So how, we'll say, remember again, Eicha means, right, how. Eicha Yoshva Badad. How did the city of Yerushalayim sit or lay desolate? So Amar Rav, both a very moving Gemara. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Me'ma loku Yisrael be'echa. Why did Klal Yisrael ultimately, again, why is Eicha? Right? Again, in general, Eicha is such an interesting Megillah. We read on Tisha B'Av, right? Eicha is like why or how. It represents the astonishment over the scope of destruction, right? Sometimes we're just left like with our mouth wide open, like how did this happen? Why did this happen? So the Gemara says, why was Klal Yisrael punished? Why Eicha? This is incredible. Because ultimately, again, we violated, right? The gematria of Eicha is 36. We violated the 36 prohibited relationships, arayos, in the Torah, and therefore, again, we were punished with Eicha. So Eicha 36, because we violated 36. We'll say, so by the way, I just want to point out how you see a fascinating, like, I guess it's symmetry or asymmetry over here. If you notice, right, Eicha comes about because of immorality. And what did we see by Micha? HaKadosh Baruch Hu is willing to go ahead and overlook almost every single infraction. Why? Because of human kindness. Immorality and human kindness are two sides of the same coin. It's just corrupted energy, right? What's immorality? Immorality is you're too nice to too many people who you shouldn't be nice to, right? That's what immorality is. Human kindness, on the other hand, represents taking the desire for selfishness and channeling it in a different way towards selflessness. So on one hand, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is willing to overlook any infraction when we are good to each other. On the other hand, when there's immorality, which is a fundamental corruption of human kindness, that's where Eicha comes from. That's where Eicha comes from. Incredible, incredible. Rabbi Yochanan, Mipnei Maloku ba'alef beis. Suppose remember again, a Megillas Eicha follows the Aleph Beis. Why is it that we were stricken with Aleph Beis? Mipnei she'avru ala Torah shenitim ba'alef beis. Because ultimately, again, because we violated the Torah, which was given with the Aleph Beis. So the Gemara goes weiter. So the Gemara says, Yoshva Badad. What does it mean that the city sat desolate? Amarava Amrabi Yochanan, Amra Kodesh Baruch Hu. Ani Amarti v'yishkon Yisrael betach. Badad ein Yaakov el Eretz Dagan v'Sirosh. Av Shama v'Arf Utal. Ach Shabiyeh Badad Moshavam. So ultimately, again, Baruch Hu said, I wanted the city to remain secure. I wanted the city to remain populated, but because you violated my will, now the city will be desolate. Ha'ir Rabasiam. Literally, again, Yerushalayim was a city that was so heavily populated. So Amarava, Amrabi Yochanan Shei Masin Kitana Legadol. They would marry off a young woman to a more mature man, Ugdol Lekatan, and a more mature woman to a younger man. Kadeshu Labanim Harbe. So they had this mechanism to grow the population. Again, this is a good thing. This is what they employed ultimately, again, to maximize birth rates. Okay, Haisa Ka'almana. So it's a very profound Gemara. The city of Yerushalayim became like a widow. So the Gemara says, Amrav Yehuda, Amrav Ki'almana, V'lo Almana Mamish. Yerushalayim became like a widow, but not actually a widow. How so? Ela ki isha shahalach baila lemedina hayam v'daito lachzor leha. So we'll say this is so beautiful. Yerushalayim became like a widow. What does it mean, like a widow? That a widow is someone who lost her husband. Yerushalayim was like a widow. Her husband, like a woman whose husband went far away and was gone for a long time, but she knew one day he would come back. So I'll say, how beautiful is this? Yerushalayim became like a widow. The Rebbe Shalom left us. He left us, right? He left Yerushalayim. He left us. But he didn't fully leave us. We know that one day, Meretz Hashem Bekarov, husband, right? The Rebbe Shalom is going to come back to his beloved. Overwhelming. Rabasi Bagoyim Saresi Mivindinos. So great amongst the nations, ruled over the lands. Amrava, Amrav Yochanan, both says incredible. Kamakum Shein Holchin Nasin Sarin Ladonean. Wherever Jews go, Jews become great. Isn't that overwhelming? Right? And by the way, this is taught to us in Eicha. Taught to us in Eicha. Right? Wherever we go, it doesn't matter how far we're scattered, it doesn't matter where we're exiled, wherever we go, we become great. Tanabanon. We'll say incredible Gemara here. So this, by the way, is an overwhelming Gemara. Get ready for this. We'll say the story of two Jews who were taken captive in Hara Carmel. Now, remember again, Hara Carmel was the Haifa, right? The site of Haifa, right? The site of the great theological showdown between Eliyahu Navi and the Nevi Abal, which we learned about last week. So what happens? Two Jews were taken captive in Hara Carmel. V'haya shaboy mahalich acharehem, and their captor was walking behind them. On the base. Amar lahem echad, amar le echamem lechavero. So we'll say, now listen to this. So just to understand the scene. Two Jews taken captive, the captor walking behind them. One Jew, the two Jews begin talking to each other. This is incredible. So, the camel that's walking in front of us is blind in one eye. So they're talking. Okay, furthermore, furthermore, we can tell the camel is holding two skins, right? Two bags. One of wine and one of oil. And ultimately, there are two people leading the camel. One is Jewish, one is not Jewish. So this is the conversation between the two Jews. So the captor is walking behind them. He hears the conversation. Amralam Shabai, I'm kshe oref. You stiff-necked people. Me'ein atem yodin. How do you know this? How do you know all of this information? So Amrlo. So they said to him, we'll tell you. We'll tell you exactly how we know it. Gamal me'asam m'shafanel. So we tell you like this. A camel normally eats right from the vegetation that it finds on the road. Mitzad sheroa ochelas, mitzad she'ena roa ena ochelas. So it's very simple. We notice that the camel is only eating the grass on one side, right? Never turning to the other side. Normally a camel will eat from both sides, it's only eating from one side. That led us to understand that what? That let us understand that the camel must be blind in one eye. Furthermore, again, the camel, how do we know that the camel is holding two skins, one of wine, one of oil, because we notice that the liquid, right? Obviously the skins leak. So we notice that the liquid coming out of one of the bags falls onto the ground and is absorbed, right? That's wine. But the one of oil, it remains on the ground unabsorbed. That's how we know one is wine, one is oil. And again, there are two people who are leading the camel. We know one of them is Jewish, one of them is not Jewish. How do I know that? Because one of them, when he has to relieve himself, just relieves himself right there in the middle of the road. But ultimately, again, the other guy goes over to the side of the road in a more private way and relieves himself like that. That leads us to believe that one of them is Jewish, one of them is not Jewish. So we'll say, so they're telling all of this to the captor who's walking behind them. Radav acharehem umatza kidivrehem. So the captor runs to the front, he checks all of this out. Sure enough, the camel is blind in one eye. Sure enough, one skin is oil, one skin is wine, and sure enough, two guys leading it, one is Jewish, one is not Jewish. Ba v'nashkan al roshan. The captor comes and he kisses the two Jews on their heads, ve'vi'en lebeis, and ultimately, again, actually the Ger says ve'vi'en lebeis, so he brought them to his house. Va'asa lahen su'uda gidola. He made for them a great meal, a great feast. And he was dancing in front of them. Blessed is God who chose the offspring of Avram and gave them of his wisdom. Wherever they go, they become great. And wherever they go, ultimately again, they become great. And as a result, he freed them and they went back home. So as I try this going. Now remember, the Gemara ultimately again is quoting this on the pasuk of Rabasi Bagoyim. Wherever Jews go, they become great, right? And even in captivity, we finally become great. But I have to tell you something absolutely amazing. The Piazetzna, quoted this Gemara in one of his drashas in Tafshin Aleph in 1940. He quoted this Gemara. And he says, what is the pshat with this? What does it mean? If you notice, by the way, when the captor overhears the Jews speaking, the first thing he says is, Am kshei oref atem. You are a stiff-necked people. You're a stiff-necked people. So the Piazetzna asked, he says, why does the captor call them a stiff-necked people? Why? And the Piazetzna said something absolutely amazing. He said it is the derech of people that when they go ahead and they encounter difficult circumstances, it breaks their spirit. And how does that breaking of spirit manifest itself? People just give up. They just give up and they just resign themselves to their circumstances. But do you see what's happening in this story? In this story, the Jews are looking at their circumstances, and what are they doing? What are these two captives doing? They're looking for more, trying to figure out more. What is it that's happening? What's the meaning of these circumstances? So they look at the camel. Why is the camel like this? Why are the skins like this? Why are the guys like this? And they're always looking for greater meaning. So the captor says, what is the matter with you people? Why can't you just give up? Why can't you just give in? Why can't you just resign yourself to the broken kite of your circumstances? But Klal Yisrael is an Am Kshei Oref. We could be being led out in captivity, and we will still look for meaning, and we will still look for deeper understanding, and we will still look for ways in which to grow, to transcend, and to learn. This is what was overwhelming to the captor. He says, I don't understand. What will break you people? And the answer is nothing. And this Gemara was true during the days when we were exiled under Nebuchadnezzar, and it was true in 1940 in the Warsaw Ghetto when the Piazetzna Mamish used this same exact Gemara to be mechazik the kehila of the brokenhearted in the ghetto. This is what it says, Chevra, right? They were being led out. They were being led out literally again to slaughter. And the Piazetzna says, whatever you do, don't give in. Don't give in. Don't give up. We are the Am Kshei Oref. We are the stiff-necked people. And being a stiff-necked people means two things. Number one, we are in perpetual quest for growth. I will say it's important to understand sometimes like who we come from. Who we come from. I will say, we have it really easy. We have it really easy. Most of life is spoon-fed to us, to be honest. Okay, we all have our challenges, right? I want more parnasa, I want more health, I want more this, I want that. Good, all legitimate things that we should daven for and halavai mirza Hashem get. But I will say, but think about just from a ruchnius perspective, how easy we have it. How easy we have it. And alachas kam because it's so easy, I will say, this is why we have to push ourselves even more. There's no time to relax. There's no time to take it easy. There's no time to give ourselves a pass. There's no time to say I'm too tired. There's no time. There's an urgency, especially now we find ourselves in Chodesh Nisan. Benisan nigalo, benisan asidun ligal. There are great things that are happening. There are wheels that are turning. And if we just internalize Gemaras like this, and we push, and we push, and we push, and we relentlessly push, and we recognize that we are the Am Kshei Oref. Nothing holds us back. Nothing holds us back. Not Nebuchadnezzar, not Hitler Yimach Shemo, not Hamas. Nothing holds us back. If we could just understand it, but more importantly, understand it, live it. This is the very yesod that has sustained our people through thousands of years. And it's the very yesod which, if internalized and actualized, can Emirat Hashem bring us to the Geula B'Karav. All right, I'll stop over here for today. Shkoyach. All right, everyone, Zoom. Mr. Ringo, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov. Karen, Mr. Ringo is making a chasana for his grandson tonight. Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov. David, nice to see you. All right, good. Great to have you.